The U.S. president could go ahead with a limited strike against Syria despite the withdrawal of support from Washington's closest ally. Barack Obama is now struggling to put together an international coalition willing to launch action against the Middle Eastern state. Now, the Pentagon is moving its naval forces closer to Syria, in position for immediate strikes if the order is given. Now, 4 destroyers are currently deployed in the Mediterranean, and a 5th is reportedly on its way, all of them armed with dozens of Tomahawk cruise missiles. There's also a NATO task force in the area consisting of 4 ships. All of that in addition to the vast military presence of the U.S. and its allies on the territory of nearby countries. RT's Marina Portnaya reports on the ongoing developments.
Officials have warned that President Obama has not made a final decision, but all signs are suggesting that a strike could occur as soon as United Nations inspectors, who are currently investigating last week's alleged chemical attack in Syria, leave the country. They are scheduled to depart from Damascus on Saturday, and that's when the UN experts are expected to brief the UN Security Council on their findings. Now, the White House is expected to present its case for military action against Syria to congressional leaders. That may have already happened during a conference call Thursday evening. Administration officials say that they have intelligence that shows that forces loyal to President Bashar al-Assad carried out last week's alleged chemical weapons attack in the suburbs of Damascus. However, critics say that the intelligence that the Obama administration does have does not directly tie Assad to the alleged chemical weapons attack. President Obama is reportedly basing his case of military action in 2 ways, on 2 points. He says, first and foremost, he believes the U.S. needs to safeguard international standards against the use of chemical weapons. We all remember how he made his statement of chemical weapons use being that red line that can't be crossed. And he also says that the use of chemical weapons is a threat to America's national interests, and now he believes that Syria indirectly is a threat to America's national interests. Now, we should keep in mind that if President Obama does order a military strike on Syria, he would be doing so without congressional approval and lacking approval from the United Nations Security Council, a resolution which is required according to international law. So if the U.S. moves in unilaterally without approval from the international community, from the United Nations, it would be acting in violation of the UN Charter. But by all reports, by all accounts, by everything that seems to be coming out, it seems as though the U.S. president is going to move ahead with his plan, even if he has to move ahead on his own, as opposed to how he previously planned to move ahead with some European partners. And while President Obama is inching closer towards international military action against Syria, U.S. citizens have taken to the streets in New York, Washington, D.C., and several other cities around the country to protest airstrikes against the Syrian people. According to recent polls, only 9% of Americans support a war in Syria. Protesters that came out into the streets say that just like with weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, false information, they believe, is being told now about Syria to justify another war.
U.S. media reports have pointed to the likely source the U.S. is relying on for its claim that the Syrian government used chemical weapons against civilians. The proof is said to be an intercepted phone conversation, evidence that was also used by Washington a decade ago to justify the Iraq war. Gareth Porter, an analyst specializing in U.S. national security policy, says that the Obama administration doesn't seem to be clear on its own objectives.
It is just so difficult to figure out what the administration really thinks that it's doing. And seriously, though, you know, it is sometimes stated that we have to do it for humanitarian purposes, and sometimes because of international law, both of which are highly debatable, to say the least, in terms of recent history as well as previous history of U.S. policy. And, you know, it begins to look like there's a small coterie of people within the administration who have gotten the idea that they want to do something, and they have somehow prevailed on the president to do something that he apparently didn't want to do. And that presents a real mystery of major proportions.